Okay, what's happening? How we doing, people? Let me know if you can hear me loud and clear. Turn up the tune. I don't like the way I can't zoom in the chat. You know, when you live stream on Twitch, you can make the font bigger. Anyway, because I'm using a little MacBook here. Oh, big up G-Man in the place. Yes, yes. What's happening, G-Man? G-Man's definitely got the bag. Yes, G-Man's definitely got the bag. All right, let me see here. It's easier to actually read the comments in StreamYard because the font's a bit bigger. All right, Volts UK, shout out to you. Philip Carl Roberts, yes, yes. FIFA, Recoba, Esau, Adolf Stalin. What a name. I got to big up my man for even having such a crazy name. I can't imagine that's your real name, obviously, but you know, for selecting such a crazy name, Adolf Stalin. Can you imagine? Ricky, big up, Mac B, Falafa man. Yes, yes. Eddie Otu, Dom Diddy. Is it 22:16 Pacific time? No, Pacific time is 3:31 in the afternoon. JG says, yo, big up yourself, Hatman. Big up, big up. Team Batman Boxing, yes, yes. Bull Terriers, SR. Harry Unboxing. Bad Nasha. Contact. Soul Blackout. Joe Slater. Joe Briggs. Who else we got here? We got someone whose name is in Arabic that I can't read, but he said, yo, blood, what's happening? I can speak a few words, a few sentences of Arabic, but I can't read it. Cash saying there's an echo. Shouldn't be. Useful Idiot in the place, Mac B, Kings, Daniel Davis. BH in the place, Cash. Oh, Cash is saying there's an echo too. How many people are hearing an echo here? Assuming you guys ain't trolling me. Yeah, Michael Thompson, Black Dynamite in the place. Nassim, Mr. Burns, yes, yes. Tom S. All right, let me scroll down. No echo. All right, no echo. They're trolling. There's always people that try to say there's something wrong with the stream, isn't it? Isn't it just a troll? You're like, oh no, we can't hear you, or oh no, there's some echo or interference when there's nothing wrong. Anyway, let's talk boxing. Now, the first thing I want to touch on here is, did you guys see Demetrius Andrade come out and call out Chris Eubank Jr.? It's not often, I mean, it happens from time to time, but it's not often that you get an incumbent champion calling out a contender. But that's what you got here in the middleweight division with Demetrius Andrade calling out Eubank Jr. because Andrade can't get a decent fight for love nor money. He's been trying for years to get Charlo, Golovkin, Canelo, and all these guys. Nobody wants to fight this guy. I'm not saying they're scared of him, but he doesn't have a style that's conducive to producing a good fight. And yeah, he just had bad luck in his career. So at this stage, I guess you could say he's sunk so low in terms of his desperation that he's calling out Chris Eubank Jr. And Joe says Andrade video was bizarre. Yeah, he looked like he was high. Bro, he sounded like he was slurring his words. Like he just been out on the booze. he looked and sounded crazy. And he was offering Eubank $1 million. Would Eubank even get out of bed for $1 million? But if Eubank is serious about becoming a world champion, then this may be the only opportunity he's going to get, because all the other belts are being contested by other people. So if Eubank Jr. cares about legacy as much as he acts like he does and winning world titles, then he should jump at the opportunity to fight Andrade. Hey, big up Adrian in the place. Long time, bro. How you been keeping? Titanium says Andrade been smoking spice. Allegedly. Andrade definitely looked crazy in that video, bro. He looked crazy. He looked crazy. And Crazy D3 says Eubank won't fight another southpaw. 99 Red Pill says Eubank isn't serious and hasn't been since the Saint. I'm not sure I agree with that. I think that he took that fight against James DeGale after that. And I think that was a decent fight at the time. He also fought that guy on PBC. I always forget this guy's name. The guy that Andy Lee knocked out for the world title. What's his name again? The Southpaw. He's really good, that guy. The guy who also fought one of the Charlos. Eubank fought him. And that was a serious fight. And it ended very fortunately for Eubank. Korobov. Thank you, G-Man. Yeah, Korobov. That ended very fortunately for Eubank because it looked like Korobov was going to school him. I mean, he was pinging him with left hands right away. So that was a serious fight there that Eubank put himself in against Korobov. Or should I say Al Heyman put him in. But, Eubank agreed to be there. JK Raid says, Hatman, do you know what is happening with Babbage? Last I heard, he might fight an eliminator for the Bridgerweight belt. Yeah, that's what Eddie Hearn said last time I heard him speak on Babbage. He talked about him fighting for the Bridgerweight title and eliminators and all this type of stuff. Yeah, big up Marley Marls. Long time. Day one. What's happening, my guy? Yeah, I'm good, Adrian. All good here, bro. Sun, sea, and sand. Adrian says, all good, quietly grinding and enjoying the effects of climate change, quote unquote. Yeah. Funny that, isn't it? I noticed the climate changing like from one day to the next. if we want to be sarcastic, right? So yeah, Eubank, if he's serious, if he has any ounce of seriousness in him at all, he's got to take the Andrade fight. Bottom line. Dave Warren says, Hatman, what are your thoughts on Hergovich versus Zhang on the UCKJ undercard? Is that going to be on that undercard? I didn't hear about that. If that's going to be on that undercard, that's a real good fight for the undercard. I mean, I think Hergovich is going to knock him out, but it will be fun while it lasts. Are you sure that's going to be on the undercard? When did they announce that? The only fight I've heard about on the AJ Usyk undercard is the Battle Jack fight, and he's just fighting some nobody. Big up Memory Warrior. Thank you, sir. Michael Thompson says, G-Man, liked your idea that Hearn is basically sabotaging the AJ show now. Apologies if I can't get to everybody's comment because there's a lot of comments coming in here. Titanium says, Hatman, you mentioned Sky pulling AJ's fights. AJ uploaded them to his YouTube channel. Yeah, I said that in the video that he uploaded them. It's just that at the time when I recorded the video, he hadn't yet uploaded the Polev and the Usyk fights. But Sod's Law, on the very same day that I upload my video, he uploads his 2 videos. It's just Sod's Law, isn't it? Lou JG says, Hatman, how do you think AJ would get on with a prime bow? I want to see how AJ gets on for the rest of his career before I can really compare him to a prime bow, because, you know, you look at Bow against Holyfield, against Gonzalez, against people like that, and you think this guy would probably take AJ's head off. But then you see Bow against Buster Mathis Jr., against Herbie Hyde, against Andrew Galotta, and you think, you know what, AJ might do this guy. Do you know what I mean? So Riddick Bowe blew hot and cold throughout his career. You know, he's a very, very hot and cold fighter. And will AJ be the same? Maybe he'll be a hot and cold fighter as well. We'll see. But when his career's all said and done and over, or at least when it's close to over, it might be close to over now, but I want to see how he gets on against Usyk, Fury, and then I can start thinking, okay, how would he match up against Riddick Bowe, Mike Tyson, Lennox Lewis, and all that type of stuff? Okay, Falafel Man says, Conor Benn is tight with Eddie Hearn, fellow Essex boys, and Frank Smith, Eddie's number 2, is married to Eubank's sister. So you can see that was an easy fight to organize. Okay. All right, yeah. Tyrone Spong is fighting on the show too, Darrell Carter. Who's Tyrone Spong fighting again? I have heard about that. Okay, against TBA. Tyrone Spong. I mean, that's not a great name to have on the undercard, is it? Normally he would be an opponent. Son of Abraham said, Hatman, would you be a boxing trainer if offered? Well, I have done a little bit of work, not paid work, but I have done a little bit of work training a couple of pro fighters a couple years back. You know, guys who I knew from the amateurs and they were turning over and they wanted me to help them out. So I did a bit of that, but you know, that was just here and there because obviously I'm not being paid. One of them wanted to pay me and, you know, he was having more fights and whatever, but he wasn't making much money. He was having to pay to get onto cards. That's what a lot of these small hall fighters have to do. They have to pay to actually get on the card. So he couldn't afford to pay nobody. But he said, you know, if he can progress and start making more money, then he'd like to pay me and get the trainer's license and all that kind of stuff. But then 2020 happened and the rest is history. So. But truthfully speaking, I don't know whether I could be a full-time trainer. It'd have to be, and obviously I don't have any experience as a full-time trainer, right? So here's me talking about boxing. It's one thing talking about it and another thing actually doing it. I mean, some of the greatest fighters of all time have tried their hand at training fighters and they didn't turn out to be any good. So, do you know what I mean? That like training is a skill in itself. I don't know whether I'd be that good at training fighters. Alexander Randall, big up. What's happening? Knox and big up, big up. Okay, Roby says, "Hey Hatman, did you see AJ TV interview? They asked him what's important, and he said right now money. I was disappointed to hear that. He's got a bag of money, and his head's in the fight to collect." Okay, I hear what you're saying. Mohammed says Isaac Chamberlain versus Chris Billam-Smith. What are your thoughts? It's next weekend in Chris Billam-Smith's hometown in terms of residence, Bournemouth. I think it's a really good and really interesting fight. I haven't seen Isaac Chamberlain lately. I saw him when he fought Luke Watkins. I think that's the last time I saw him, actually, when he fought Luke Watkins. I don't think I've seen him since. I think Isaac Chamberlain is better than the last guy Billam-Smith fought. What's his name again? McCarthy. Yeah, I think Chamberlain is better than McCarthy, and he'll be a slippery customer for Billam-Smith. That's what I'll say, a slippery customer. Isaac is not the biggest cruiserweight out there. I don't think he's going to be the stronger guy in there. I think Billam-Smith has been in with Riakporhe and, other big, strong cruiserweights. So I don't think Chamberlain's going to bother him with physical strength or anything. But he's a slick guy. He's a sharpshooter. He can be awkward to hit. So I think it's going to be a real interesting competitive fight. I don't see anyone just dominating that fight. I think it might be close. And with it being in Bournemouth, maybe Billam-Smith will get a bit of favor from the officials. Who knows? Grant T says, "Yo, have you been to any boxing clubs on your travels? If so, what's the difference between the UK and abroad?" Not yet. I haven't seen any. Where I am right now, I haven't seen any boxing clubs. It's not really that kind of party down there, to be honest. Boxing clubs are more a city, in big towns and cities is where you find boxing clubs. And I'm out in the sticks. All right, Tom says, "Just said in a recent interview that he wants to be remembered for the fights, not the belts. Feels like he's subconsciously given up." I mean, AJ's got a lot to prove in this Usyk fight here. And if he comes through with flying colors or comes through at all, then we're going to start reassessing what we think about his mental state and so on. So I think we can assess his mental state prior to now, but maybe he's changed it around. So I said in a video a few weeks ago, the AJ, I think, is one of those guys who's programmable and he needs to be programmed. He's not a guy that can just go in there and figure it out for himself. Fury's more like that. He can just figure things out. AJ needs to be programmed. But I think if you program him the right way, he can be very good. Do you know what I mean? Like program him Manchurian Candidate style. That's how he needs to be programmed for this fight, this rematch of Usyk. He needs to be programmed like the Manchurian Candidate. So even if he gets hit with 5 bullets, he'll keep walking forward like the Terminator. That's how he needs to be programmed. Yeah, MK Ultra style. I'm being facetious before anybody says, Illuminati confirmed. Zaire says, Hatman, have you heard of the LDBC? I've heard of the LBDC, yes. Ardil says, Hatman, do you know Andrew Tate? Yes, I know Andrew Tate. Mac B says, what are your thoughts on Arslan Beck Makdamov? Yeah, I've seen him a couple times. He's crude, but he's very strong. And he's the first guy to drop Marius Wack as far as I'm aware. Yeah, so he's very, very strong. But we need to see him in there against some more meaningful opposition. Don't get it twisted. Stop here, Marius Wack is good. But how old is Marius Wack now? He's in his 40s, right? And you get these tough guys, these iron jaw fighters like Marius Wack, who for the whole careers don't get, well, he has been stopped a few times, but he's never been down before. You get these guys, but eventually, if they keep on going long enough, they're going to get stopped. Just like Ray Mercer eventually got stopped. Yeah, it went on for too long. He was known as the tough guy in the heavyweight division. He had a great chin, but by the time he fought Shannon Briggs and Klitschko, he was done, completely washed, and he got knocked out both times. Crazy D3 says, have any known boxers reached out to you or watched your videos? Yeah, loads of them over the years. Dylan White reached out. Lawrence Okoli reached out. Jarrell Miller, he used to watch my videos and comment on some of my videos back in the days. And also David Adelaide said that he watched my video. There was a bunch of fighters over the years. I think even Dave Allen said he used to watch my videos. And I suspect, I don't know this for a fact, and they didn't reach out, but I suspect that AJ has watched some of my videos over the years. And maybe even Eddie Hearn as well, I suspect. Don't quote me on that because I'm not saying it's a fact, but I suspect based upon certain things I said in some of my videos. And then right afterwards, I heard AJ in a video and Eddie Hearn in a video saying very similar things. Could just be a coincidence, but I suspect they may have watched my videos. Marley Mars says, do you think Spence Crawford will ever be made? I think boxing is dying and that fight can revive it. The UFC is whooping boxing because nobody seems to want to make big fights. Well, I guess you're talking about America. You know, I've spoken in previous videos about this whole UFC versus boxing situation. UFC is only whipping boxing in America. It's not whipping boxing in the UK, is it? It's not whipping boxing in most or many European countries and what have you. But in America, yeah, UFC is consistently doing better. Crawford versus Spence, I think it will be made. Yeah, I mean, we're getting positive signs from both parties at the moment. So I think it will get made. Crawford is a free agent, right? The only thing that might stop it, potentially, and I hope this isn't the case, is if Crawford has some type of issue with his previous promoter, Bob Arum, because I know that there's a legal case, but it's Crawford suing Bob Arum, isn't it? So I don't know. Oh, big up Chris Andre in the house. Big up for the super chat. Yes, the great man himself. Shout out to Chris Andre. Adam F. Patrick says boxing isn't dying, it's thriving. Yeah, it all depends on what perspective people are looking at it from, isn't it? Because people who look at it from an American perspective, like a lot of people do, including British people, it's mainly the hardcore British boxing fans that tend to look at it from an American perspective because they watch a lot of American boxing. Whereas the casual, not just casual, right? But certainly with the casual British boxing fans, they're going to think boxing is thriving, right? Because they just focus mainly on British boxing. And I would say people who have a more holistic view and they view boxing in its global totality are also going to say it's thriving. But if you're just American-centric in your view of boxing, then I can understand why you're going to say, boxing ain't doing so well. All right, let me catch up these. let me catch up these comments. I'm way behind. Chris Andre says, get a cocktail or two on me. Big up, Chris. I'm missing the climate change sun already. Beterbiev just had surgery on a leg. So how is man fighting Yard in October? I didn't even know that. Is that right? I'm starting rumors. He got shook of roadman. He got shook of roadman science. Oh yes, Tunde and my man with the roadman side. Tunde and Spencer with the roadman science talk. Yeah, I didn't even know that about Beterbiev's leg. Big D Doomer says, Hatman, I've not played games in 3 years. Was going to get the PS5, but Andrew Tate saying it's better to live in the real world. Is it better to just leave games in childhood? I would say if you play games regularly, like all the time, unless you're making money off it, like you're a live streamer or something, then it's probably not a good idea. There's probably a lot more productive things you could be doing with your time than constantly playing video games. So I would say whatever you do, whatever you spend a lot of time doing, try and monetize it, because you can in this day and age. You could have any random hobby and turn that into a YouTube channel or an Instagram page and monetize it. You see what I'm saying? So if you don't want to stop playing games because you really enjoy it, just make sure you get making money off it. That's all I can say to you. Okay, Michael Schiller says, Lawrence Okolie has yet to show me he has something more than sauce to his game. This octopus gangly style isn't pleasing to the eye. And on another note, I feel Conor Benn is being cashed out. Okay, interesting comments there. Interesting comments. This octopus gangly style isn't pleasing to the eye. Well, you're not the only one who feels like that, for sure. But you feel like he's yet to show he has something more than sauce. Well, what do you mean by sauce? I think Lawrence Okolie is a very good fighter. I think his physical strength is very key to his success, because he's able to physically bully people in the ring. If they've got more finesse than him, more skill than him, he just gets hold of them and just nullifies them, you know? So, yeah, it's not always pretty to watch, but it's effective. So, I mean, if you're looking at his hand skills, I was quite impressed by his performance against Glavatsky, however you pronounce his name. I was quite impressed by that. I know Glavatsky at the end of his career, but still, I thought the way Okolie boxed, and that was a step up in levels, right? He never fought somebody of that caliber before. And the way he boxed in that fight and set up the KO, there wasn't much clinching. There wasn't much of the ugly type fighting in that one. But yeah, last time out, it was more typical Lawrence Okolie, where there was a lot of clinching and whatever. But there was also a lot of very big punches. So he's going to be one of them guys, you know, that's not always pretty to watch, but he's very difficult to beat. And as far as Conor Benn, is he being cashed out? I think that Eddie Hearn would rather take a risk putting Conor Benn in against Eubank at a higher weight instead of putting him in against, let's say, a Jerome Ennis or an Ortiz or, you know, a Spence or a Crawford right now. Because if he loses to one of the top fighters in his division, then people are going to turn around and say, well, he's not going to be any good anyway. Do you know what I mean? Like he's never going to be good enough to hang with the top guys at 147. That's how they would react if he lost to one of them, especially if it was decisive. But if he moves up and fights Eubank and loses, he's got plausible deniability. You can say, oh, well, he was fighting a middleweight. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know whether Eddie Hearn is cashing him out. I just feel like Eddie Hearn doesn't think Conor Benn is ready for the top guys at 147. And will he ever be? You know, how long is it going to be before the Spencers and the Thurmans and these guys and even Jerome Ennis move up? Maybe that's what Eddie Hearn is really hoping for. Did I just say Thurman a second ago? Now, you can go in with Thurman. But Spence and Crawford, I meant to say. Spence, Crawford, Ortiz, Ennis, these guys may move up. And if they move up, let's say within the next 18 months, then comes an opportunity for Conor Benn because there's pretty much nobody left in the division. So maybe that's what Eddie Hearn's hoping for. And in the meantime, get him some big money fights, right? You got your Chris Eubank Jr. fight, where if he loses, he can come back down to welterweight, maybe get that Keith Thurman fight. Danny Garcia, even though Danny Garcia is talking about moving up. Badzil says UFC sold out O2 Arena for this weekend. Okay, that's cool. But, you know, we just had Tyson Fury, Dylan White did 80,000 a couple months back at Wembley. So UFC is not on the same level as boxing in the UK at this juncture. Let me catch up to the comments again. Tom Rogers says, do you think Dylan White will ever win a world title? No, I do not. No, I do not. How about you? Do you think he'll ever win a world title? Robbie says, what's up with Lawrence Okolie calling Eddie Hearn a slave driver? Eddie took him from McDonald's and gave him a chance. Was disappointed in Okolie. Well, Eddie Hearn didn't take it from McDonald's exactly because Okolie was working in McDonald's when he was an amateur. Or in fact, before he was an amateur. Before he'd ever boxed, I think, he was working in McDonald's and he saw, this was the story that he gives everyone. He saw AJ winning the Olympics. I think that's what it was. When he was working in McDonald's. And he looked up at the TV and he said, I can do that. And then he quit his McDonald's job and went down to the local boxing gym. That's how the story goes. So, yeah, Eddie Hearn weren't involved at that point. And then he obviously had some amateur fights. He got himself, you know, to the Olympics in a pretty short space of time. And again, Eddie Hearn weren't involved in any of that. So Eddie Hearn took a guy who came out of the Olympic cycle and he turned him into a world champion. Obviously, Lawrence Okolie's the one in the ring doing all the fighting. As far as him saying Eddie Hearn's a slave driver, it sounds a bit off as an outsider looking in. Yeah, Eddie Hearn's there buying him Sky Dweller Rolexes and all this kind of thing. But you don't know who's been in Lawrence's ear. You know, apparently he's been with Mayweather and this person and that person. And I also heard that he's left 258 Management. I'm not sure if that's true, but that's what I heard. 258 Management being AJ's management company. So, yeah, he's from what I heard, he left them too. So I guess he's trying to reassess his career and thinks he's worth more. And I don't know, you know, who knows what's going on behind the scenes and why he feels the way that he feels. But it certainly seems harsh to say something like that. If he was going to say Eddie Hearn is, I don't know, whatever, Eddie Hearn isn't giving me the best deal possible. Okay, but to come out and insinuate that he's a slave driver, again, from an outsider looking in, that seems a bit off. A Fight Sport Talk. Big up, big up. Yes, yes, all the way over there in New Zealand. All right, let me address this actually, because Adolf Stalin says Chris Andre boxing is Usyk and average southpaw. I'm not sure if Chris Andre has answered it, but let me tell you what I think Johnny Nelson is trying to say when he says that stuff. I've never rated Johnny Nelson as a pundit or even as a man. I guess he was a decent boxer, but he isn't very articulate. He doesn't explain himself well. And what I think he meant is that because Johnny Nelson basically has the idea that a southpaw is supposed to be extremely elusive, slick, difficult to hit, negative, awkward, and all that type of stuff. That's my interpretation of what Johnny Nelson thinks a southpaw is supposed to be all about. And Usyk isn't necessarily that. Yeah, he isn't like a Pernell Whitaker, a heavyweight version of Pernell Whitaker. He's more aggressive. Do you know what I mean? He's more willing to take risks. He's more willing to exchange. Although at the end of Pernell Whitaker's career, he did kind of get involved in some slugfest. But, prime Whitaker was a guy who he didn't want a mark on his face. He wanted to finish the fight the same way that he started the fight. And so Usyk's never been like that. So I think that's what Johnny Nelson was trying to say when he said Usyk is not an elite southpaw. Not that he's not an elite fighter, but he's not like a Pernell Whitaker who's just completely slick and impossible to hit. Yeah, that's my interpretation anyway. Because I can't make sense of why he would say that otherwise. That's a good comment there from Big Boys Boxing. He said, Eddie overpaid many fighters when the zone started up. Now fighters are only getting paid what they're worth. They don't like it so much. I think you hit the nail on the head right there. That's what it is. Eddie Hearn was paying fighters. I'm not going to say overpaying because, again, overpaying, you pay a fighter not just based upon how much return you think you're going to get from that individual fighter there and then. You pay them based upon what you think you might get out of them down the road and how much they might benefit your promotional company or your television network overall because you're growing your stable. So you can get value from a fighter in other ways over the long term. So I'm not going to say overpaying them, but he was definitely doing his bollocks on shows right earlier on, for sure, when he was trying to build up his DAZN stable and what have you. Yeah, he was doing his bollocks on shows. He was paying fighters more than he was getting back. And like you say, now that all that is stopped, the fighters are thinking, whoa, Eddie's shortchanging me here. But it's not that. It's not that Eddie's shortchanging you. It's that Sky, Ben Shalom, Boxer, they're now doing the same thing that Eddie Hearn was doing a few years ago because Hearn was trying to build his stable. And now Ben Shalom's trying to build his stable. So that's all it is. If they think the Ben Shalom money that he's thrown around now is going to last forever, well, they're going to find out the hard way that that's not the case. Yeah, once he's reached a certain level, if he does, in terms of building his stable, then the purses, I'll say the purses the fighters pay is not going to be quite so generous unless you're actually bringing a lot of money in. Chris Andre says, interesting take on Nelson's comments. It might also be competitive spirit in him. No one has more defenses of the cruiserweight title than Nelson, but many see Usyk as the best ever cruiserweight, along with Holyfield. Yeah, I mean, Nelson, bizarrely, remember a few years ago when he wanted to come back and fight Marco Huck when Huck was about to break his record? And I think, wasn't it Glavatsky that actually stopped Marco Huck breaking his record? So yeah, don't underestimate Johnny Nelson's ego. Remember when he was, because Johnny Nelson had like hip replacement surgery or something, didn't he? And after that hip replacement surgery is when he wanted to fight Marco Huck. So maybe there's an element of ego to it. It's possible. Although you would like to think that Nelson wouldn't put himself in the same category as Usyk. You'd like to think that, but who knows what goes on in a man's head. G-Man says, do you think DAZN will make changes moving forward? Me and you agree the broadcast team is awful. Surely it has to be addressed. Well, actually, I liked the fact that they got Barry Jones on board last time out. Yeah, Barry Jones was a very good addition. See, when Barry Jones was commentating on their last show, I forgot that the other guy, what's his name now? The old man. I forgot he even existed because all I could hear was Barry Jones and David Hay. Costello. Yeah, I forgot Costello was even there. He just like faded into the background and all I was hearing was Barry Jones and David Hay. So they made some good additions there. And I know David Hay rubs people up the wrong way and whatever, but he's a character. For me, a commentary team isn't only about competent analysts. You also need some characters, at least for me. For my entertainment, I want some characters in there, people who are going to be like a cat among the pigeons a little bit. That's why I also like Carl Frotch as a pundit, because he ruffles feathers and it makes it entertaining. Yeah, big up Harry Travolta. Danny North says, do you think the Ben Eubank fight is basically Hatton versus Frotch? A sort of fight, just not a fair fight. No, I don't think it's like that. I don't think it's a Hatton versus Frotch. Eubank is nowhere near as good as Frotch. He hasn't proven himself to be. Will Conor Ben be as good as Ricky Hatton? He's got a long way to go to prove it. But I don't think it'll be as extreme as that would have been. Hatton versus Frotch. I don't feel like it would be that extreme. Little Jacob says, Hatman, is boxing the only sport you're into? Yeah, pretty much. Unless you count fishing as a sport, then yeah, I'm into boxing and that's about it. I'll occasionally watch a bit of UFC, but I'm very casual when it comes to UFC and MMA. Boxing is pretty much my sport and has been since forever. When I was a kid, I used to watch, and I'm going way back to the 80s, going into the 90s. I used to watch a bit of basketball, bit of American football, bit of actual football, right? In fact, let me remix that. It's not American football, it's gridiron. Let's give it a more appropriate name. Used to watch a bit of gridiron, bit of football, these athletics and all this type of stuff. But boxing is the only sport that really captured me and made me fanatical about it. All the other sports were just, light entertainment. Boxing is the only sport I've ever fallen in love with. KB said, Hatman, did you see the podcast where Don Charles said he's still having surgery to fix what David Hay did to his mouth in Munich? I didn't see that, but I'm not surprised. I shouldn't laugh. That was messed up. Hey, David's a puncher. So there you go. That's what happens when he starts punching people in their mouth with a bare knuckle. They're still feeling the effects all 10 years later. Crazy. Agent 007 says, what kind of fishing? Sea fishing. Sea fishing. But I only do fishing in tropical countries, because I don't like fishing in cold weather. Having to wear, I don't know, waders and wellies and a big jacket, that's long. I like fishing on a nice, beautiful sandy beach or off some rocks, clear blue sky, 30 degrees Celsius weather, water that's crystal clear, like drinking water. That's my idea of fishing. Incidentally, I saw a picture, which I posted in my Element group, of AJ fishing. I never knew AJ was into fishing, but if you go to his Instagram, there's actually a couple pictures there on different occasions of AJ fishing. I never realized he was into a spot of angling. Keely says, Don really does not like Hay. He would fight him tomorrow if he could. Nah, he legit would. Don Charles would legit fight David Hay. He would actually fight the man. And it wouldn't end well for him. But yeah, he really hates David Hay. Don Charles is a very emotional character. He takes things personally and what have you. So the David Hay situation, he was really upset by the fact that David Hay became Chizora's manager. That really upset him somehow. I guess because Don Charles had to take more of a back seat, maybe in terms of advising Chisora and steering his career. Also, he got rid of Don Charles after the second Dylan White fight. And maybe he feels like David Hay had something to do with it. I don't know. But yeah, he really don't like Hay. He's held that grudge for all these years. And if you're still having surgery after someone broke your jaw 10 years later, then who's to say we wouldn't have a grudge as well? You know what I mean? But if you look at it objectively, David Hay was there on his own in Germany. Derek Chisora approached him, and then David Hay pieced him up. Yeah? What else was he supposed to do? For guys in your face like that, and you fear harm, you got to piece him up. And that's what David Hay did. I mean, he weren't waiting for this mad Zimbabwean to strike first. Yeah? The guy was getting too close. He was getting too aggressive. Hay pieced him up. It was what it was. Don Charles tried to get involved, and I get it. That's his fighter. He's there to protect his fighter and fight his corner. But, at the same time, you got to have sympathy for David Hay. He was there on his own. Chisora was there with his team. And Hay just came away. Hay came away with a W against Chisora's whole team. That's crazy. Actually, no, Hay was there with Adam Booth, but Booth was just passive in it. He didn't get involved. So Hay was like fighting off at least two other people. Why would, in retrospect, why wouldn't Derek hire that guy? Do you know what I mean? I know Derek hired him more for the business side of things because he knows David Hay is a good salesman. But also, if a guy has not only beat you up, but also your trainer, and then a few months later, he knocks you out in the ring too. This guy's completely dominated you in and out of the ring. So if you can't beat him, join him in it. I guess it's one of those ones. Oh, Danny North from Wandsworth. Okay. South London in the house. Southwest London to be precise. Excuse me. Okay, big up Simon Brandy for the super chat. He says, serious question. Do you think you could chin Big John Fury, Hatman? And can you explain why John strikes the fear of God into everyone? Thanks for all your content and shout out to Chris Andre. Do I think I could chin Big John Fury? Well, I think I could chin a lot of people, but what I think and what is actually reality are two different things. You know, sometimes a man's ego, especially if you could, handle yourself quite well as a younger man, your ego can get the better of you, like Big John Fury when he was squaring up to Baby Ting. Like, realistically, Baby Ting would fold John Fury in half. Let's be real. He would fold him in half and he would post him through Tyson Fury's letterbox. Yeah. So, we can all say that I would beat this one and I would beat that one. The reason that John Fury strikes fear into everyone's heart is because he talks a great game. And some people understand human psychology to such a degree that they rely on talking a great game because they know that they can scare people with the stuff they say and the way they act. And therefore, nobody's going to challenge them. You see what I'm saying? So this is why, and also, of course, because of the incident where John Fury gouged out a man's eye. You see, it's one thing fighting somebody who's going to fight fair with their fists. People wouldn't be so scared of John Fury, I don't think, if he hadn't had that incident where he gouged out the man's eye. Yeah? If he was just a guy that fights fair, then I think there'd be plenty of takers, actually, to challenge John Fury in or out of the ring. But because he likes, and John Fury in court said that it was an accident what happened to the guy whose eye he gouged out. He said it was an accident. Obviously, that's ridiculous, right? He was hoping that the judge would be lenient. That's why he was saying all that stuff and pretending to show remorse and what have you. But since he got out of prison, John Fury is always playing on that incident, like subtly. When he was in that beef with Mickey Theo, he was saying, I'm going to do you some serious damage and it's no holds barred. And he constantly talks about no holds barred and all this type of stuff. Says that I'm X-rated outside and, all this. So, yeah, I think that's the reason, because he's a dirty fighter. Because, yeah, you can be good with your fists, but what if somebody does something like bites your ear off or gouges your eye out? Do you know what I mean? There's an element of chaos there. If you're not used to that kind of dirty fighting, you're not going to be as confident fighting somebody in those situations. You see what I'm saying? So, when I was a bouncer, there was a lot of dirty fighting that went on. Yeah, a lot of dirty fighting. And when I think back now to some of the situations I was in and the stuff people said to me and, the kind of fights I was in, I think back and I'm like, wow, I was in a lot more danger than I realized, because I had people that I was in fights with say, I'm going to gouge your eye out. I'm going to do this and do that. I didn't really take them seriously. I thought it was just them talking rubbish. Do you know what I mean? But because there was one incident in particular where it was me and another bouncer, and we were working in this bar. It was a pretty big place. I want to say the capacity might be, I don't know, 700-800. It was pretty big. We were working in there, and my colleague wanted to get somebody out because there were some guys who were being rowdy, and he went over there and he wanted to get this guy out, but he was intimidated by this guy. I think he knew who he was or something like that. You know, them ones where the bouncer knows the local tough guys and he's scared of them. He was one of them ones. So he was talking to the guy and he was kind of like intimidated by him. So he called me over. I went over there and I took a look at this guy, that he was trying to escort out. Looked at his body language, looked at his face. And I was like, okay, this guy is not somebody to mess around with. So I just charged straight in, and the situation was calm because my colleague wasn't even being aggressive with or anything. He was trying to be polite, but the guy was just parring him off, saying, "No, get out of my face." So when I went over there, I just went straight over, grabbed him by the neck from behind. Yeah, so my forearm was underneath his chin, and I lifted him off his feet. Literally lifted him off his feet. I was leaning back, lifted him off his feet, and as he's struggling, and I know this sounds crazy, as he's struggling, I bit him on the shoulder as hard as I could. And the reason I did that is because I knew I could just tell he was a dangerous, kind of guy, a rough guy, and I wanted to shock him straight away. Yeah, put pain on it. That's one of the things that I learned when I was a bouncer, is that you have to put pain on people. If you got someone who's going to be a problem, yeah, get in there straight away and put some hurt on them immediately. No matter what way you do it, hurt them quickly. Yeah, and that's what I did with him, and he was shocked. Like when I bit him, the grabbing him by the neck thing was one thing, but when I bit him, I could see like he was shocked. Do you know what I mean? Because he actually kind of stopped struggling when I started biting him on his shoulder. He didn't realize what was going on. Anyway, got him outside, and then he came round. He got him out the fire exit, and he came round the other side of the building. And when he came out round the other side of the building, I went out there with the other bouncer. And he was mouthing off, and he was with a couple of his friends, like, yeah, come around, come, we go in the alley. I'm gonna gouge your eye out. I'm gonna do this and do that and blah blah blah. And the other bouncer was, no, leave it. So again, he was just talking, and there were so many incidents where people say, I'm gonna stab you, I'm gonna do this to you, I'm gonna do that to you. I didn't really take it serious at the time, or not as serious as I would take it now. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes you're in the moment and you just think, whatever. Anyway, how did I end up talking about this? I can't even remember how I got here. Big up Stephen O. Big up Counterpunch Boxing News. He says, so would you say John Fury, and thank you for the super chat, would you say John Fury is all bark and no bite? 80-20 bite? Big up from the US. Hey, big up. I wouldn't say it's all bark and no bite, but I would say his bark is a big element of his game. That's what I'll say. His bark is a big element of his game. Robbie says, John Fury, you notice he never had any bare knuckle videos of him fighting. Yeah, I noticed that. And of course, there's a lot of dispute about some of John Fury's fighting stories. Him saying that he went over to Ireland and beat their bare knuckle champion for whatever it was, 100 grand. I mean, that's a lot of money, especially back then. Wouldn't there at least be a video? Because that fight would have been a big deal. And he's saying he went over to Ireland and beat their bare knuckle champion for 100 grand. You would imagine there'd be a video of that, because there is videos of some of the fights that happened back then. Like there was videos of Paddy Doherty. Yeah. There's videos of him fighting. The boxing world said, well, I'm not even going to say what the boxing world said, but not in this lifetime. Not in this lifetime would be my answer. The only jab I've taken since I was about 12 has been in the boxing ring or on the cobbles. How about that? Is it Panny? Says, Hatman, did that tough guy ever get you back for biting his shoulder? No, he didn't. No. Big D says, Hatman, you still doing that Confessions remaster? Yeah, but that's going to take, it's not even a remaster. It's a complete the Confessions that I'm working on is going to be like an audio play. So this is not going to be like a normal audio book. This is going to be an audio play with different, characters and different voices and sound effects. And I mean, it's going to be like a movie, but an audio version. That's what it's going to be. So it's going to take a long time to complete. But I am working on that. That's all I can tell you. Mo Man says he's on his 7th one. Flipping heck. Have you turned green yet? man's on his 7th one. Yeah, Chris, like kind of like a radio sketch. Just like that. But feature length. Casual Alexander says, how do you like living in the sticks versus the big city? Oh, I like it just fine. Living in the sticks is great depending on where you are. If you're in the right place living in the sticks, oh, beautiful. Beautiful. SE says, why do so many people think you hate Dylan White? Because they're idiots. That's why. They're idiots. Stupid people believe silly things. And so you've had one silly person or two silly people create this narrative that, Hatman's held this grudge against Dylan White because years ago, Dylan White did an interview with Rob Tebbett. And in that video, he said, Hatman's cool, but other times he talks rubbish. And so Hatman, took that to heart and started hating Dylan White ever since. I mean, that has got to be the most ridiculous nonsense I've ever heard in my life. I mean, what kind of weak-willed waste man would you have to be to take what Dylan White said so much to heart, to hold a grudge ever since? Dylan White bigged me up in that video. he said, yeah, I like Hatman, but he's a funny one because sometimes he says good things, but other times he says critical things and talks rubbish. But anyway, big up Hatman. That's what Dylan White said in the video. And somehow people have tried to twist that and say, oh, you see, Hatman's hated him ever since that. What a load of rubbish. In fact, Dylan White messaged me after that. How about that? I was talking to Dylan. Yeah, we were DMing on Twitter after that. Man saying I held it's just idiots, man. People with brains the size of peas. Do you know what I mean? Putting 2 and 2 together and getting 25. That's what you're dealing with. And they come up with some silly little narrative and then proliferate it among other idiot people. That's what it is. Why would I hate Dylan White? The amount of stories people try to come up with, right? I heard some story that me and Dylan White had some kind of confrontation in the street. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, what are you talking about? People just making things up to feed into their little narrative. It's the stranger. People got too much time on their hands, man. Strange stuff. Yeah, big up Outmatch. Yes, yes. Everything's good, Outmatch. All good over here. Fight Sport Talk said, any thoughts on what happened with R. Kelly? Well, this ain't the place to discuss that, but you know, R. Kelly's a wrong'un. I know that. Definitely a wrong'un. The only issue I would have with R. Kelly is, will we get consistency? Will other people who have been charged with similar offenses get similar sentences? They should. Big up Nathan Sterling. Big up Myanmar. What's happening, my G? Jazz B says, what was a convo with Dylan? What was a convo with Dylan? He asked, well, the first thing he said to me was, I never knew you were a Brixton, man. And we got talking about Brixton stuff. That's what I remember. In terms of the conversation we had right after that video, yeah. Virtual says, do you have a 9 to 5? Nah, bro. I'm self-employed. I haven't had a 9 to 5 since 2009, 2008. Was it 2008 or 2000? I think 2009. That's the last time I had a 9 to 5. Okay. Someone says, Hatman, do you feel as if Crawford is quite underrated? I see people, mainly Canelo fans, saying, oh, who has Crawford fought? And all that nonsense. What do you think? Well, the proof is in the pudding. And unfortunately, up until now, Crawford hasn't had the opportunity to fight the elite guys at 147. And it's not his fault, but you know, you have to judge a fighter by what they've done lately. And Crawford hasn't beaten anyone great lately, has he? Again, not his own fault, but when you look at his quality of opposition compared to Canelo, Canelo's been fighting better guys. Yeah, certainly with Bivol, obviously. Well, actually, you could probably argue with the people he's been fighting at 168. I would say Callum Smith was a good fighter. Caleb Plant. I mean, you won't find out exactly how good these are until later on down the line, if they can bounce back. Indeed, Chris Andre. R. Kelly's definitely a wrong'un, but I'm still waiting to see who's on that slags list. No one is talking about that. But they were pushing Johnny Depp and that Herd character 24/7. Indeed. MSM distractions. Outmatch says, did you see Julius Francis ice that fool at Box Park? I did indeed. He did what he had to do. That's called a preemptive strike. When I first did a course, you know, to get a license to be a bouncer, it was before the SIA came out. So I had to go to do a little course and then get my license off the local council. That's how it used to be done. And the local council would issue you a license. You'd pay a little amount of money. It was only a small amount. It was like 15, 20 pounds or something that you pay for the license. And I think it lasted for a year, or was it 2 years? So you did the little course. But anyway, on the course, they taught us about a preemptive strike. They taught us about all the law. regarding what you can and can't do as a bouncer. And they said that if somebody's up in your space and you fear that they're going to attack you and you feel like an attack is imminent, you can hit them first legally. It's called a preemptive strike. And when Julius Francis hit that guy, that was absolutely under the category of a preemptive strike for sure. So I knew as soon as I saw that video, I was like, he's not going to go to prison for that. You know what I mean? Because that's a preemptive strike. The guy was already being violent and throwing his hands around at other people. Then he tried to rush forward at Julius, and Julius hit him. And so he went nowhere. Okay, big up George William Gordon for the super chat. He says, Ruiz Ortiz, who wins and are you interested? Yeah, I'm interested. I think Ruiz wins. Ruiz has been out the ring a long time since the Areola fight, but Ortiz has also been out the ring a long time. Other than his last fight against Charles Martin was earlier on this year, wasn't it? But prior to the Charles Martin fight, I think it was 2 years since he'd been in the ring, there or thereabouts. So he's been pretty inactive himself. Yeah. And I think also with his age and the inactivity combined, you saw a deterioration in his punch resistance. I remember when Ray Leonard came back after years out the ring against Terry Norris and even the Hector Camacho fight. Leonard's punch resistance weren't the same. He wasn't able to take the shots anymore. And I'm wondering if that has happened with Luis Ortiz. You know, as you get older, your punch resistance is just not the same anymore. Unless your name is George Foreman, right? George Foreman had tremendous punch resistance as an old man. But for a lot of guys, yeah, once you're reaching the late 30s into the 40s, you can't take the same kind of shot. I mean, look at Povetkin. You know, his legs were all over the place in both Dillian Whyte fights. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to Ruiz versus Ortiz for sure. I think Ruiz will win, but it could be interesting because stylistically, I think Ruiz is a favorable style for Ortiz. He's a shorter guy. He comes forward relatively squared up, doesn't have the quickest feet in the world. It lines up nice for that Luis Ortiz left hand down the pipe. But Ortiz is a lot slower than he used to be. So, and again, I'm not sure where his punch resistance is at. So I'm expecting Ruiz to win. Would it be a massive shock if Ortiz were to beat him? No. But I want to say it's, in my head, a 60-40 for Andy Ruiz at least. If not, a 65-35 for Andy Ruiz. So I'm fairly confident he'll win. Who have you got in that fight? Xavier Williams says, if I was picking anyone to KO Jake Paul, it would be Freezy McBones from Brixton. What's going on with Freezy? I don't know what's happening to it. Is it some type of immigration issue? I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but Freezy's in his 30s now. He's in his 30s. I don't know why he hasn't turned over pro. There was talk about him turning over pro a couple years back. I swear he'd spoken to Sky and all sorts. He was even in the papers. But then nothing. So I don't know what's going on with Freezy. Maybe he's having an issue getting licensed. See, a lot of people don't realize that it can be extremely difficult to get licensed in the UK. I've personally known a couple fighters, one guy in particular, who was waiting to get licensed by the British board for damn near 2 years. 2 years. Right? And he was having to get people to write references and this, that, and it was crazy. Took him about 2 years. So does Freezy have an issue with his medical? Has he got like bad eyes or something? I don't know what it is, but it's just a shame that this guy still hasn't turned professional, because he can punch, that's for sure. I'm not so convinced about the rest of his game, but he can definitely punch. George Williams says, Luis Ortiz is officially 43, unofficially 45. I think you're being generous. Put a 0 in the end of that. Some of these names are difficult to pronounce. Nathrusti. Is that how you pronounce my man's name? Says, Hatman, who do you think will win between Usyk or Loma if they were hypothetically the same weight class? That's too technical to even think about. See, this is why I don't really like pound for pound, because it's such an abstract concept. Yeah. If you put them the same weight class, who's taller? Who's naturally heavier? How much faster would you make Usyk if he was a welterweight? Do you know what I mean? It's such an abstract thing to do pound for pound matchups. I don't usually like getting into that. Hey, big up G-Man again. Over and out, bro. Take it easy. Speaking of UFC, right? Let's talk about UFC for a second. Alex Pereira, is that the guy who's gonna fight? What's the guy from the black guy from New Zealand in UFC? What's his name again? Not Usman, the other one. What's his name? Izzy. Yeah, but what's his proper name? Not his nickname. What's Izzy's name? Well, Volts UK said, Hatman, what do you think about Nick Bull? Yeah, he's a good little fighter. He's exciting, isn't he? He's always mashing somebody up. He mashed up Isaac Lowe, who looks like an Amish, a member of the Amish community, by the way. Isaac Lowe, no disrespect, but he looks like an Amish guy. He mashed up Isaac Lowe on Tyson Fury's undercard, and he just mashed up the African guy last time out. So he's an exciting little fighter, but he's always got a nosebleed somehow. You know, he always wins and beats people up, but he ends up getting a busted nose in the process. But yeah, I quite like him. Adesanya, thank you. Yeah. So is the guy that someone else just mentioned the one that's about to fight Adesanya, the one who knocked out Adesanya in kickboxing? That was a horrible knockout. You guys know the one I'm talking about? The Latino guy. I think he's from Brazil. And he knocked out Adesanya horrible in a kickboxing fight. Horrible. With a left hook. And I think he's supposed to fight Adesanya next or soon. Yeah, Piera. Okay. Pereira, however you pronounce that name. Yeah, that was horrible, bro. Adesanya. Oh my gosh. He got crumpled. And he's always the left hook with that guy, isn't it? Always a left hook. I saw some highlights of his fights, and he's cleaning people out with left hooks all over the place. But saying that, when I watched their kickboxing, because they had 2 fights in kickboxing, and it's the rematch where Adesanya got knocked out, but he was winning up until that point. So he seemed the more skilled fighter at long range. He seemed to have more ability. But I think he got a bit complacent, and then my man was able to catch him with the hook. So will he make the same mistake if they're fighting in the octagon? Surely he's going to be careful and wary. And he often is anyway, right? Adesanya is not the most exciting fighter in the octagon. He's often, cautious and he does the bare minimum. Okay, I never realized that. Fight Sport Talk says he was winning, but Pereira took the rematch on a week's notice. Okay, never realized that. Got to think about the takedown. But Adesanya, I mean, does that Pereira guy take a lot of people down? He seems like more of a striker to me. Because he also comes from a kickboxing background like Adesanya, right? So is he really that good on the mat? Lenny McLean says, Hatman, did you ever watch K1 when Bajansky fought? Remy Bajansky? Yeah, I watched a little bit here and there. K1 was wild. They had legitimate fights in K1, but he also had like freak show fights. You know what I mean? I actually preferred the freak show fights. Mac B says, Hatman, I see a great future for Jared Anderson. I see him picking up world title at some point in the future. What weaknesses do you see in his game? He pulls back sometimes from punches with his head in the air. I would say that's one of the weaknesses there. But he's so athletic that maybe he can get away with it, at least while he's still young and has the athleticism. But then again, I'm thinking about a young Muhammad Ali, because Ali used to get away with leaning back and all this type of stuff, pulling straight back. But Ali was tall for his era, right? There were a few guys that were taller than Ali, but 6'3" in the 60s, you're one of the tallest fighters in the division. Whereas Jared Anderson's 6'4" now, he's not one of the tallest fighters in the division or even close. So, yeah, but I agree with you that he's got a bright future. And I'll be amazed if he doesn't become a world champion. I'll be amazed. Craig says, handed in my notice of work today, leaving to start my own business, not working for anyone else anymore. Any tips for starting out a new business? Depends on what the business is. But congratulations for handing in your notice. I remember when I left my last job back in, as I say, 2008, 2009, one of the greatest days of my life. Since that time, I never had to ask nobody, can I take some time off? Can I go on holiday? None of that. Never had to call in sick. Never had nobody breathing down my neck. So holler at me in the Element group, Craig. We can chop it up and talk more about that in there. Oh, okay, you know what business you're doing. Exterior cleaning, pressure washing, just any advice as a self-employed person. Well, it's very different to what I do, but any advice? See, normally the advice I give people who want to go self-employed is to start out running their own business alongside being employed. So like do your self-employed stuff part-time. And then, I usually advise a gradual transition rather than just jumping feet first. Right? Because even though technically I did jump feet first, I was already, without realizing it, developing my business. Because to me, it was just a hobby at the time, 2008, 2009. I had something I was doing as a hobby that I didn't realize I would make any money out of it. But as time progressed, the money just came naturally. So yeah, and I had some savings because when I quit my job in 2009, I had some savings. I went traveling. I went to a couple of different countries, went to the Middle East and here, there, and everywhere. And I didn't know what I was going to do, but things just fell into place organically. But I would say, because I've never lost money, my business has never lost money. I've made a profit every single year that I've been in business. That's unusual. Most people, when they start a business, they're going to lose money and all this kind of thing. So, yeah, that's why I would say to most people is try and do it gradually if you can, rather than just taking a massive jump. But if you're already in that line of work, like for example, a friend of mine is in IT and he fixes people's computers and does all this type of stuff. And I've been telling him for the longest, why do you still work for these people? Why not just start your own company? Yeah, you could start off by going around to people's homes. Yeah, you can take care of a lot of stuff remotely anyway. Yeah, you can take control of their desktop from your computer and fix stuff that way. And you can also have people come around to your house and you can go around to their house. Why don't you just do that instead of working for these people? But some people, for whatever reason, they don't have the confidence to go it alone, or they might like the stability of having a regular paycheck and not having to, drum up the business by yourself. It all depends on what kind of person you are as well. Me personally, I was a terrible employee. I'm not somebody that likes deferring to authority, for one. That's why I didn't like it in school. I don't like people telling me what to do. I don't like being under anybody else's regime. I've always been someone that likes to do my own thing and be my own boss. So for me, I didn't find it intimidating or daunting to have to do my own tax returns and all this. I didn't find any of that daunting. Yeah. I'm happy to have the responsibility. Some people don't like the responsibility. So anyway, I'm waffling at this point. We'll chop it up more in the element group about that. Oh, some people say super chat not working. That's weird. Super chat not working. All right, let me check something here. 1 second, people. All right. I'm not sure why the super chat ain't working. I don't know if my VPN has got anything to do with it, but I just switched the location of my VPN Maybe that'll fix it. I don't know. Don't know what that was all about. Previous people were able to send super chats, but I guess, I don't know, a YouTube glitch maybe. Who knows? Unless you guys are trolling. There's so much trolling on these live streams. People are like, I hear an echo when there's no echo. The super chat ain't working when the super chat's working. Okay, Luke Stenson says it's sent, but my message didn't come through. Let me scroll up. Let me have a look here. It's sent, but your message didn't come through. Let me see. Okay, the super chats were it was G-Man, there was Chris, there was George, there was George again. That's messed up, man. If YouTube are taking your money and they're not putting the messages on the screen, that's messed up. That's messed up. Anyway, Boatsy versus Pascal. Where did you hear about that? I mean, Pascal shouldn't be fighting anymore. But didn't he win recently? How old is Pascal now? 40-something? Fresh Don said, Hatman, did you work at Fridge Bar? No, I never worked at Fridge Bar. Sticky One says, Eddie's too stressed these days. Yeah, a few weeks ago, I want to say a couple months back, when he was being, I want to say, almost rude to Umar. That's when he seemed stressed. But in his last couple interviews, he seemed a bit more cool. So maybe a rough patch has passed for Eddie. But it was definitely a moment there where Eddie was looking stressed out in interviews. And it was more than passive aggressive. I mean, he was he was getting rude at certain times. All right, big up for the £1 super chat. So super chat is working. Thank you, Aaron Clark, for proving that the super chat works. So the other guy's trolling me or what? Our Fight Sport Talk says Pascal is the worst drug cheat along with Miller. GJ says, where does the name Hatman come from? It comes from owning a large collection of hats. I wish it was more interesting than that, but that's all it is. So yeah, where's this rumor or wherever it is, or this news that Boatsy's gonna fight Pascal come from? Where did you hear that? The Joker says, don't be surprised if Zhang drops Hergovich next month. I mean, Zhang can definitely punch. Hergovich apparently has a really good chin. And I saw some Hergovich fights in the amateurs where he got clocked with some serious shots and he didn't wobble. So maybe that's why Sauerland has so much faith in the guy, because he has the chin. Because Hergovich has holes in his game, of course. He's not the most difficult guy in the world to hit. He's not the fastest guy out there. So when you weigh all that up, you think, why would they be in a rush to put him in there against the Wilders and, you know, the real danger man in the division? Well, if he's got a real good chin, then you can kind of see why. Nabzilla says, Hatman, what do you think of Frank Sanchez? I was quite impressed by Frank Sanchez against F.A. at Jagba. I thought he looked very good in that fight. I know it wasn't the most exciting performance, but I was impressed by his movement, his athleticism, his speed really impressed me in that fight. Not only the foot speed, but the hand speed. I mean, the counters from Sanchez, especially early on in that Ajagba fight, were razor sharp. I mean, anytime a Jagba even thought about throwing something meaningful, Sanchez was slipping and encountering with explosive punches. So I was impressed by Frank Sanchez in that fight. I was impressed. And I think he is an interesting addition to the heavyweight division. Lucan says having a chin is overrated. It don't win fights. Well, it don't win fights by itself, but I don't think it's overrated, especially a heavyweight. Especially a heavyweight. Because in a heavyweight division, one punch can change it all or end it all. So I think that heavyweight having a good chin is more valuable than it is in the lower weight divisions. Big up Super J. He said, I like your Fury video. It was fair. James Sweeney with the random question. He says, would you go to a nightclub or a concert on your own? I have been to nightclubs and concerts on my own before. Yeah, I've done that before. I used to go to, back in the days, I would listen to Choice FM. And there was a DJ on there who had a hip hop show called DJ 279. And he would hold monthly raves at the Subterranea, which was a small little club in Ladbroke Grove underneath the West Way. And sometimes I swear sometimes they were weekdays and, you know, just odd times. And obviously I'm from South London and this is all the way in West London. And a lot of it was like American hip hop that was underground, them kind of people that were performing there. And so a lot of my friends were like, I don't even know who that is that you're going to, you know, the concert or the rave, you're going to go check there. So occasionally I just go by myself up there. But when you become a regular at a place like that, you're not really going by yourself anyway. Do you know what I mean? Because you go there and people that you see there before and, you know, you buck up and all that kind of thing. So I used to go to the Subterranea. And there was also a rave in Leicester Square. There was a club there called Gas Club. And there was a rave they used to have on a Tuesday night called Yum Yums. This is way back in the days. And Yum Yums was lit, as the kids would say today. You wouldn't think that Tuesday night would be a club on a Tuesday night would be rampacked full of people. But Yum Yums on a Tuesday in Leicester Square was lit. You know what I mean? On a Tuesday night. So a couple times, I think maybe once or twice I went there by myself, but most times I went there with my friends. So yeah, that answers your random question. Friday Night Flavors. Yes, Fresh Stone. You know. Okay. Friday Night Flavors. Yes. DJ 279. And also they had quite a few, they brought quite a few artists over from America to perform at the Forum. Is it the Forum in Kentish Town? It's called the Forum, isn't it? Yeah, I went there a few times. I saw Ludacris perform at the Forum. I swear that was a DJ 279 gig when I saw Ludacris perform there. Yeah, Corks as well. Trip down memory lane, boy. Yes, Corks. Corks, Bar Rumba, Rainforest Cafe. I remember last time I went to Rainforest Cafe, it was an after carnival party. That was lit as well. It was popping in there. What else was there in the West End back in the days? 10 Rooms, Sound Republic. Any of you old enough to remember Sound Republic? That used to be the spot in Leicester Square, Sound Republic. Not Ministry. Ministry's in Elephant and Castle. I'm talking about Sound Republic in Leicester Square. Callum says, thoughts on Tim Westwood? Thoughts on Tim Westwood. About time. That's what my thoughts are on Tim Westwood. About time. I went to Westwood raves as well. When he used to do the rave in Tottenham. What was that place called? Club UN? Is it Club UN? It had a few different names. They changed the names. But Club UN. I swear it was called Club UN. Next to the police station in Tottenham. Any of you guys from North London know what I'm talking about? Westwood used to do the rave there, Club UN. And before that, he was at the Palais, the Hammersmith Palais. Super J says, do you know Flaxman Sports Centre in Camberwell? Apparently Dylan White trained there for years. Yes, I know Flaxman Sports Centre. Yep. On Flaxman Road. Yep. Flaxman Road leads up to Loughborough Junction. Yep. And that in fact, that road, Flaxman Road, one side, actually, is Flaxman Road all SE5, or is the other side of it SW9? I think it might be all SE5. But if you cross the train tracks, if you cross under the train tracks from Flaxman Road onto the Loughborough Estate, you're now in SW9, which is a Brixton postcode. Shout out to Sharon Philpott. She says, do you watch Time Booth videos? Yes, I've watched Time Booth videos in the past. I don't watch them so much these days, but I have watched plenty of Time Booth videos. Yes, indeed. Ardil says, thoughts on Andrew Tate? Andrew Tate is a very intelligent man. He is very bombastic. He exaggerates a lot of stuff for comic effect. I think a lot of people don't really understand his sense of humor. They think that he's being serious all the time when he's actually being sarcastic. And I find him quite entertaining. That's what I'll say about Andrew Tate. I find him quite entertaining. And if you're somebody who's into making money and you're trying to improve your mindset so that you can get in better shape, maybe you're trying to be self-employed and, up your game financially, I think that he, in some cases, depending on the kind of person you are, he might be able to help motivate you. So that's what I think of Andrew Tate. But at the end of the day, he is a pure capitalist. So he will use, and I'm not criticizing capitalism here, people. I'm just telling you what capitalism is. It doesn't have a moral base. So Andrew Tate will use typical advertising tactics to get people to sign up to his Hustlers University. He'll try and make you feel bad about yourself and, all this kind of stuff. And then he'll present the answer at the end. And the only answer is to sign up for Hustlers University, or else your life will be forever garbage. So it is what it is. It's business, but just understand what's going on. When I was in college, I did media and photography. I did a BTech in media and photography, and I also did psychology. And in the media module, one of the first things they told us or taught us is about how advertisers, and this is in the 90s, right? They told us about how advertisers would try to make you feel as if you need their product, whether they're selling deodorant or whatever the case may be. They play on your insecurities. So what they do, there's a standard advertising technique, is to play on your insecurities and then offer the solution to your insecurities, which is their product. And so Andrew Tate's doing the same thing with his Hustlers University and all that. And I'm not hating, I'm just saying that is what it is. Ariad says, were the rumors about Tim Westwood known? Yeah, they were known for years. I mean, years and years. What? Bro, I'm amazed it took this long to come out. The rumors about Westwood were there for years. Oh my gosh. Not even rumors. I've known people that gave first-hand accounts about dealings with Westwood. And that's been an open secret in the Black community in London for decades. So people have been knowing that Westwood was a wrong-un for time, for the longest. So he must have had protection from way up on high, protected by the Prince of Darkness himself to have gotten away with it for so long. Yeah, because everybody knew about Westwood. Certainly from my generation, everybody knew. Big up Peter Hunter. He says, hey, mate, is it humiliating for AJ that Usyk held back on finishing Joshua in round 12, saying he has a family, etc.? Also, when's dating apps part 2? The dating apps. Oh my gosh. The dating app, I've actually done more than one part of the dating apps thing. I think I've done at least 2 or 3 already. So the part that you saw, the last part, would have been the second or third one I did. But yes, I will be doing it. But the last one I did was so depressing. It was so depressing, bro. Like I just had all this negative energy when I was swiping through all those awful, awful individuals. And I was like, good God, is this the state of modern women in today's society? Yo, talk about slim pickings. Awful, awful, awful. I would love to be young again, as most honest people who are above a certain age will tell you. I would love to be young again. I'd love to be 20 again. But I wouldn't want to be 20 again today in 2022. Hell no. Yeah. In 2022, I would not want to be young, at least not in the West. No way. I'd like to be young again, but transport me back to the 70s or the 80s and make me 22 then. Don't make me 22 now. The kind of women that young men in the West have to contend with at this point is shocking. But sorry, to Peter Hunter's question, was it humiliating? I don't think AJ was really, I suspect AJ wasn't really too focused on that, to be honest with you. I think he just feels like he has to be more ready. Because fighters can say anything. A lot of it is, psychological warfare. So they're going to say, I could have finished you, but I didn't. And do you know what I mean? AJ shouldn't be reading too much into that. That's all I can say. He shouldn't be reading too much into that. Because if he is, then he's defeated before the fight even starts. Oh, yeah, Storm. I know about Storm. Yeah, Crip says Sound and Storm. Oh, yeah. Definitely know about Storm. They used to have garage raves in there. Yeah, the BBC doing the same. BBC doing the same by coming out with a documentary like they did with Savile. The BBC are jokers, bro. The BBC protected Mr. Jim'll Fix It for decades and then acted like, oh, we didn't know what he was doing. What? Bill Oddie worked there for decades and he said everybody knew what he was doing. Unbelievable. And there was a journalist after let me not even say his name, The Algorithm, right? The first video that ever got demonetized of mine was when I mentioned that guy's name. Let me call him Jim'll Fix It. Jim'll Fix It, when he died, there was a journalist, you look this up, there was a journalist who wanted to release this documentary about Mr. Jim'll Fix It straight after he died. And he approached the top brass at the BBC and said, yo, I want to run this documentary exposing him. And he was told, no, we're not going to run that. And instead, they ran several programs eulogizing Mr. Jim'll Fix It, celebrating him and celebrating his life as a national treasure. That's what they did. And it wasn't until that journalist went to ITV, the documentary, the same documentary he tried to get them to put out on BBC, they put it out on ITV about a year later. So that's the BBC for you. They're jokers. And then, of course, once the cat was out of the bag, BBC were like, oh yeah, we care so much about that story. Let's try and be at the forefront of investigating it. Oh yeah, right. That old tactic. Huh? Try and make yourself look less guilty by being at the forefront of the investigation, like John Wayne Gacy. For those of you who don't know, John Wayne Gacy was a notorious serial killer in the United States. And he was seen as a pillar of his community, or at least he tried to present himself as a pillar of his community because he owned a construction business and, you know, he would get involved in local charity events and all this type of stuff. And when some of the young boys that he was killing started going missing, he actually would partake in searching for them. I twisted them. Man was that twisted. He was on the search. Oh my gosh, what happened to this poor young boy? He was out there acting like he cared, and he was the one that actually killed him. That's how the BBC were with Jim'll Fix It. Unbelievable. But how the BBC managed to actually survive that scandal alone, never mind all the other scandals they've been involved in, How they managed to survive that scandal is beyond my understanding. Why people are still paying television license and that corporation is still making money is beyond my understanding, beyond my comprehension. That should have been the end of them right there. Badzul says, Hatman, do you agree that Scarface is the greatest movie of all time? No. It's a good movie, but it's all subjective, isn't it? You can't really say that one movie is the greatest movie of all time. It's very, very subjective. And that's the point I wanted to make, Afro Jam. Westwood worked at the BBC for how long? And it was an open secret in the black community what he was doing. I mean, I'm not going to put him on the same level as Jim will fix it, but I can't imagine it was a total mystery to his former employers. And it nearly came out a few years ago, right? During that whole, historic investigation that the BBC were supposedly a part of, which is really a joke. And at the time, Westwood left the BBC, or his contract was terminated from Radio 1, and he actually went to Choice, which is now Capital, and took DJ 279's job. Can you imagine? That was crazy. Capital did, I swear, was it still Choice back then, or was it Capital? But whoever it was, they did 279 dirty when they gave Westwood his job. That was crazy. Adolf Stalin said John Wayne Gacy versus Jimmy Savile is a 50-50 fight. All right, peeps, I'm going to end this here. Shout out to everybody for locking in. Special thanks to all the super chatters. And I'll catch you guys next time. In fact, did I speak about everything I wanted to speak about? I wanted to talk about the Eubank Jr. Spoke about that at the top of the live stream. I think I spoke about everything I wanted. Anyway, catch you guys next time. I'm out.